In the beginning, we had a world-changing vision to unite international retina societies, with each of our last two editions drawing 1,000 attendees from almost 70 countries. This vision has now become reality. We bring retina specialists together. Our conference features presentations from global thought leaders, accredited professional education courses, expert panel discussions, and industry exhibits. New in 2019 is RWC Unplugged, a physician-organized and driven session that offers a unique opportunity to learn, share, and discuss controversial topics in retina with a large group of industry experts and clinical leaders. No scripts, no holds barred. Join us for the third edition of the Retina World Congress. Together, we continue to transform the retina world community. In the beginning, we had a world-changing vision to unite international retina societies, with each of our last two editions drawing 1,000 attendees from almost 70 countries. This vision has now become reality. We bring retina specialists together. Our conference features presentations from global thought leaders, accredited professional education courses, expert panel discussions, and industry exhibits. New in 2019 is RWC Unplugged, a physician-organized and driven session that offers a unique opportunity to learn, share, and discuss controversial topics in retina with a large group of industry experts and clinical leaders. No scripts, no holds barred. Join us for the 3rd edition of the Retina World Congress. Together, we continue to transform the retina world community. In the beginning, we had a world-changing vision to unite international retina societies, with each of our last 2 editions drawing 1,000 attendees from almost 70 countries. This vision has now become reality. We bring retina specialists together. Our conference features presentations from global thought leaders, accredited professional education courses, expert panel discussions, and industry exhibits. New in 2019 is RWC Unplugged, a physician-organized and driven session that offers a unique opportunity to learn, share, and discuss controversial topics in retina with a large group of industry experts and clinical leaders. No scripts, no holds barred. Join us for the 3rd edition of the Retina World Congress. Together, we continue to transform the retina world community.
Hello, and welcome to Retina World Congress eLive. We thank you for joining us from around the world to this wonderful educational event. We're very proud at the Retina World Congress to host this with this month, the Mexican Retina Association, who's going to present along with notable experts from the United States and Argentina, a discussion on autologous retinal transplantation for primary refractory macular hole. We look forward to your participation across the world in this and future RWC events. I'm Tarek Hassan, the president of the Retina World Congress, and I'm helped today by my moderator and the director of communications and information for the Retina World Congress, Jorge Rocha from Brazil. We will be joined by Tamer Mahmoud from the United States, Ezequiel Resende from Argentina, Virgilio Morales Canton from Mexico, as well as Jerry Garcia from Mexico as well. To continue on, I'm going to turn the program over to our Director of Communications, Jorge Rocha of the Retina World Congress, who will lead our moderation of this wonderful panel.
Thank you, Tarek. Welcome, everybody from the world. Today is a very special day. With the dark days of the virus around the world, today we have a chance to still communicate and see our friends and have the very good education platform, the RWC eLive. We're gonna see each other frequently in the coming months. And today we have a dream team that we're gonna discuss about macular hole. And for the beginning, we have Ezequiel Resende, the former president of Argentina Retina Society. And then after him, we have Virgilio Centurion from Mexico. And after that, Tamer Mahmoud. Let's start with Ezequiel. Please, Ezequiel, let's start with your case.
Okay. Thank you, my friends. ILM retracting door technique for highly myopic eyes. The myopic foviokisis is observed in highly myopic eyes in about 9. Yes. Excuse. Sorry. I am okay. It's working?
Perfect. Working.
Okay,
perfect.
sorry. Sorry. Okay, I start again. ILM retracting door technique for highly myopic eyes. Myopia photosis is observed in 9 to 34 patients, percent of patients with posterior staphyloma. It's a term introduced by Takano in 1999. It is a splitting of the retina founded in the OCT. And the pathogenesis of the photosis implies the inflexibility of the inner retina, the tangential traction caused by the posterior vitreous, and an anterior posterior traction caused by the elongation of the globe. This specific combination of premacular vitreous component in the OCT and the photosis are at high risk for further complications. So we need to follow them closely, looking foveal detachment, macular hole, or posterior retinal detachment. This is an example. It's a patient with a premacular component in the OCT and a photosis. 3 years later, she noted a decrease in her visual acuity. And in the OCT, we found a foveal detachment. At this moment, I indicate a surgery, but she refused because this is her only eye. But 4 months later, she came again, but now with a posterior retinal detachment. This is a schematic diagram of the pathogenesis of photosis with the 3 most important factors: the tangential traction, the rigid ILM, and the anterior-posterior traction due to the increase of the axial length in these eyes. We have 2 big groups to manage these problems at the planar vitrectomy to release the inner traction, and the macular buckling to decrease the traction exerted by the posterior staphyloma. This is an interesting article that we can help us to understand what happened in this ILM with pathologic myopic photosis. This article, they compare ILM from the group of myopic photosis versus idiopathic macular hole, and they found different features in the group of ILM myopic photosis with a peculiar stiffness of the ILM and a large amount of cells on the retinal size of the ILM in these cases, in the cases of the myopic photosis. However, the inflexibility of the ILM is considered an important cause in myopic photosis. This is another interesting concept. Performing the ILM peeling in planar vitrectomy remains controversial for myopic photosis because the ILM peeling leaves a high risk of developing a postoperative macular hole in these patients. And we can minimize the traction force, sparing the foveal region when we are doing the ILM peeling, like you can see in this case of Dr. Mariano Didos. Classically, the classical form to peel the ILM is arcade from arcade to arcade, but Michalowska introduced the invert ILM flap. Here she leaves a piece of ILM attached at the edge of the macular hole, and then she inverted, breaching the macular hole. Since then, modified techniques such as temporal ILM flap or invert ILM insertion have been introduced to potentially improve the surgical outcomes in these difficult cases. When we compare these 2 techniques, the classical with the flap techniques, we have there was no significant difference in the reattachment rate between the 2 techniques, but we found a significantly higher macular closure rate in the group of ILM flap. So here we have a difference with this technique. This is another article where the authors studied the posterior shape of the eye, and they found that 77% of the eyes with posterior staphyloma have a nasally distorted shape of the posterior shape of the eye, posterior segment of the eye. Now I want to introduce this surgical technique that is the internal limited membrane retracting door for myopic macular holes proposed by Tamer Mahmoud a few years ago. And we have a few videos. This video shows myopic foveoschisis with a foveal detachment, perhaps a small hole. To perform the retracting door, you need to peel. Here I am with a loop. I dye with a brilliant blue. To peel the ILM nasal to temporal as much as you can, arcade to arcade. And in this case, I decide to stop at the edge of the foveal region because this patient not have a big macular hole, so I stop here. I leave the ILM invert over the temporal retina and leave the patient 3 days in prone position with a gas tamponade. This technique works very well in this patient. Look the postoperative OCT. The other video I'm bringing is another case with the same technique, but here we have a macular hole retinal detachment, posterior retinal detachment in high myopic eye. I peel more temporal the ILM retracting door. I pass through the macular hole, like Tamer told us in his article. Here I am searching for peripheral breaks. And another concept I want to show with you is that when I am doing the fluid exchange, I don't like to aspirate the subretinal fluid through the macular hole because you can damage the edge of the hole, and I don't like to perform a retinotomies. I aspirate the subretinal fluid with a microcannula 40 gauge through the retina. Also, I leave the patient 3 days in prone position with gas tamponade. And this is the last video I want to show you. I think this is quite funny because here I made a few mistakes. It was a patient sent from a colleague for a reoperation. And the first mistake I made was that I didn't check if there was remnant vitreous in this patient. When I realized that, it was too late because I have already done the retracting door. And when I detached the posterior hyalate, I lost the ILM because it was attached to it. Do you see the inferior ILM retracting door? So at this moment, I decide to change. I decide to make a temporal flap. But when I was peeling the ILM, finally I kept it in my hand. So now I have a problem because I didn't have ILM near the hole. At this moment, I decide to change again and plug the hole with a amniotic membrane. I put a chandelier and with 2 forceps, I put the amniotic membrane into the hole. This is an article that I read from Stanislao Rizzo a few months ago. And I finished the surgery with a fluid exchange and gas. In the postoperative control, the retina was attached, but look, the amniotic membrane was swimming in the posterior pole. Now the retina was attached, but the hole remains still open, and we don't have ILM near the hole. What do you think about this case?
Very good case, beautiful. And I think we should continue present, and at the end of the talks, we can just start to discuss. But we have very good case, and I'm very anxious to ask you some question. But if I start now, can delay a lot. But now I have my friend from Mexico, Virgilio, that's exceptional, outstanding vitreoretinal surgeon, and he has a very good case. I love see his case because I learn a lot. Please, Virgilio.
Hello, good morning, my friends, and good morning to all the world. It's great to be here. And well, I will present a couple of cases, surgical cases, using let me share it. It's okay?
Yes, that's good.
Starting the presentation. Yeah, let me go to the first one. Okay, it's okay?
Very good.
Okay. So these two cases, one, it's the one that I did using the Tamer technique, the autograft, and I did this for the Floretina meeting. It was live surgery, and I did a couple of mistakes that I want to share with you. So this is the first case. It's a male, 65 years, and with a decreased vision of more or less 4 months. And the visual acuity was 2800, and there was no previous surgery. So let's see here the video. This was the size. It was quite large, almost 900 microns. And I was doing a conventional technique, you know, separating I can pause here. Separating the hyaloid and then using brilliant blue. This is the dork, which is very good because you see how it's heavy, so it goes under perfectly, I mean, to the bottom of the vitreous cavity. And in this case, I decided to peel the ILM. That is something that I think we can discuss later for this technique. And I was doing over there the cauterization, which I think it's quite important to do a very good cauterization because something you don't want is bleeding. Then I was cutting. It's cutting an area that it's not cauterized. And this is, I think, my first mistake, that you need to place some heavy liquids, but I think I didn't place too much. So if you see over there the edge of the heavy liquids, it's very close to the area of the graft. So, and you will see here what happened, that I'm taking the graft. You have to be touching the retina, and in this case, the forceps, I was using one of these serrated forceps, and this was the problem. I am just in the edge of the heavy liquids, and I lose the graft. So the nightmare started over there. It was live surgery, so I decided to, with the flex loop, getting it. And the second problem I had, you see over there, that the graft, it was in the loop. So another complication, I had to release that graft in order to place it. Obviously, they were asking me how did I know if it was upside down or not. And as a joke, I said that I couldn't see the photoreceptors. But anyway, I was able to release it with the forceps and finally place it over the on the surface of the retina. So with the flex loop, I placed it in the adequate position. I lasered the retinotomy, and with the flex loop, I'm placing this in the adequate position, and I fill the eye with heavy liquids. And 3 weeks after, we remove the heavy liquids, and you will see this is like 1 month after the surgery, And you see that the graft, it's over there. I mean, the visual acuity is recovered to 2200. And I don't know, obviously, if the graft was in good position or upside down. Let's see the next one. Okay, this is case 2. This is a case that after the enthusiasm of doing these techniques, one of our fellows, Daniela Meisner, asked me if I could assist her, and I said, perfect, okay, let's go and do it, and I will teach you how not to do mistakes. So this is a male, again, 6 months of decreased visual acuity, 2400, no previous surgery. So this is the OCT, all large hole, as you can see. And let's see the video. So, okay, the same thing, doing separation of the hyaloid, doing vitrectomy, the conventional technique. But in this case, after I spoke with Tamer about if I should or not remove the ILM in these cases, we decided not to remove the ILM. So where she did the cauterization and then cutting the graft. It's quite important, as I said, try not to have a bleeding. And if you have some bleeding, you increase the pressure. So I said, feel more the vitreous cavity with heavy liquids, and she's getting the graft with the forceps, and then with the flex loop, sliding the graft to the posterior pole over the macular hole, and she did it very well. Everything went okay during the surgery. The graft was quite large, but I think it's okay. It's difficult to do a good calculation of the size, and it's always better to have a larger than a smaller. So laser and filling the vitreous cavity with heavy liquids, the conventional technique. Planning to remove it after 3 weeks. And you will see here the post-op one. It was perfect. The graft was well placed. We instruct the patient exactly not to face down, nothing like that. The opposite, if can be face up, it's much better because the heavy liquids will, press against the graft. This is the first day of surgery, and you see in the OCT the graft it's in the adequate position. But 1 week after, she called me and she said, the flap is not over there. So clinically, it was a free flap. It was dancing maybe in some place in the vitreous cavity, obviously not seen. But it was interesting to see this OCT where clinically we knew that the graft was not there, but there's some remnant of tissue at the bed of the macular hole. So we don't know what was that little thing. But the solution was to re-op, and as she didn't do ILM peeling, so she decided to do one of the techniques that Cookie presented with a graft of the remnant of the ILM. So she did the surgery like that, and fortunately the hole was closed with the ILM flap, and the visual acuity recovered to 2100. So I think this was a good example that 2 techniques can be done. And this is, let me stop, share. Okay, so these are the 2 cases I wanted to present.
Very good case, I love it. And I have some questions already from the word, but I'll keep this and start with Tamer. And Tamer has the main talk about autologous transplantation. And after this, we can start open discussion.
Thank you very much, Jorge and Tariq, for this live interaction about the transplant and other techniques. It's very exciting, especially nowadays, to still have those connections and have a good discussion. So Ezekiel and Virgilio presented great cases. So I want to try to go through some of the slides about the global study and what we know so far about the transplant to open the discussion. I have no disclosures. And a few years back, the first case that we had was a very high myopic lady that had multiple detachments because of a myopic macular hole. And the goal was try to close the hole, and we couldn't get a free ILM because of the depth of the staphyloma and how thin the retina is. So we were successful at trying something new or getting a full thickness neurosensory retina to close the hole. So then the hole closed. So what? What was very exciting is not just closing the hole, is that gradually over a few months, the retina started thickening as the vision improves, developed some outer retinal layers. And with colocalization with microperimetry, there was increased central fixation over the area of the graft. So we started exploring that more and more. And we published that initial case. And since then, there has been so many groups around the world that publish some smaller pilot studies with some modification of the technique. And this is one of the Taiwanese group with some good outcomes using an autologous blood to keep the transplant in place. So we thought we wanted to get that impression of the initial experience. So we got some of the surgeons that initially adopted the technique to understand how this works and the anatomical and functional outcomes. We had 41 patients, 41 eyes of 41 patients, and all of them were refractory macular holes that had multiple procedures before average 1.5. And those were very large holes, and you can see the minimum linear diameter, at least 825. Many of them were high myopic with very thin choroid. And in that initial experience, 88% of those refractory holes closed without excluding any cases of the transplant. So we understand all the complications, and those that closed had a negative Waskey-Allen sign. Also, more importantly, when you look at the OCT, the ellipsoid zone and the external limiting membrane and those that closed gradually repo a significant decrease of the size of that defect. More importantly, when you look at that initial experience, 37% had improvement more than 3 lines, and 41 were stable. And I'm going to go back to that group. Complications like any retinal procedures you encounter. Now, we were very excited to then go to the next phase and understand how many surgeons around the globe had their initial experience with those studies. And Tariq and Virgilio is one of those groups. So we can understand the differences and include all the possible complications and see how we can change things. And it was very exciting to get a surgeon from almost every continent. And with the diversity of those patients, the slight differences in techniques, we can really get to understand more about the technique, anatomical and functional outcomes. And I would like to thank Stavros Moisidis and Nicole Koulissis for the fantastic analysis. And also in a masked review, we looked at all those OCTs without knowing about the clinical presentation or outcomes of those patients. And it's interesting that it's not only refractory, but also cases of primary, unusually large or myopic macular holes. So this was a multi-center study, 33 surgeons from around the globe, 129 eyes of 129 patients for the last 2 years, and some modifications between different surgeons. And you look at how diverse those patients are from around the globe. So 27% were primary macular hole that never had any surgery before or ILM even peel. 58% was refractory macular holes with an average of 1.6 prior procedures. 15% were a combined macular hole retinal detachment. We all know how difficult those cases are. And many of the cases were myopic, and you see how giant those holes are on average. 90% with neurosensory retina without choroid. And you look at the different harvest side of those grafts, mostly from the superior area, but some infratemporal as well. 4% posterior to the equator and 16% anterior. And also you look at the size of the graft in disc diameter. So this indicates how large those holes were. Graft positioning was 81% in the pre-retinal space, and 19% decided to tuck it in the subretinal space. 61% was silicone oil tamponade, 20% only PFO, and then was later removed, and 19% were gas. And similar to the initial surgeon study in that global study, about 88% of those holes closed. But more importantly, we understand now more in a masked way from the analysis of the study how there is reconstitution of the ELM, the ellipsoid zone in those patients. And you can see initially how it looks like, and then at 1 month, how those layers look like, the ellipsoid zone and the external limiting membrane, and now gradually over 3 months, how it grows over those areas of the graft where the holes were closed. And a very interesting new finding is the linking of the neurosensory layers for those that closed that had better outcomes. Initially, after the procedure, you see that vertical line between the graft and the adjacent retina, and then gradually over a few weeks, you can see how those lines gradually fade away. And it seems like the layers identify themselves. Plexiform connects to plexiform. Nuclear layer connects to nuclear layer adjacent to the graft, which was a very interesting finding to us. So more important than just the anatomical outcome, we can see that the reconstitution of the external limiting membrane in those that closed was about 59%, and it took an average of 4 months. The ellipsoid zone was about 41% in about 4.4 months. And the linking of the neurosensory layers in those that closed, 29% with a mean of 4.2 weeks only. So average, looking at the whole group, the visual acuity improved significantly, but more importantly, in that initial global study without excluding any patients, 43% improved 3 lines, 29% gained more than 5 lines of vision. And interestingly, let's look at a subgroup. 6 cases had a final vision of 20/25 or better. And those are primary unusually large macular holes. And those are an example of 2 patients that got to 20/20 and unusually large holes, but it took 16 months to get to 20/20, indicating that it is a completely different process of healing of those types of holes. What about the complications we have seen in the global study? 5 cases had a post-op retinal detachment. We have to understand many of those were myopic macular detachment and also PVR. 5 cases of graft dislocation, mostly with the gas. And what can we learn so far from all the data that has been submitted and analyzed in the world study so far? What are the changes that we can make? We know that the security and integration of the transplant takes between 1 week and 1 month. So look at that picture above, post-op day 1, and how there is a little bit of overlap of the graft to the adjacent retina, which becomes completely secure in place by 1 week. And at 1 month, it's completely integrated, and you can see the different layering of the retina with linking of the neurosensory layers. And therefore, how can we improve on things? Nowadays, why do you have to risk going through a fluid air exchange or a gas bubble or direct PFO silicone oil exchange when you can leave PFO in the eye? Also, thanks to Steve Charles, who actually pushed me this way, there is an advantage of leaving the PFO in the eye and not only risking the dislocation. Now that we know that the transplant is secure at 1 week, we can leave it for about 10 days to 2 weeks and remove it from the eye. And then the perfusion of the graft is much better, which may reflect on visual function. So the diffusion of oxygen from PFO is 17 times more than silicone oil. And therefore, we expect some initial ischemia of the graft because of cutting the graft from the surrounding retina and atrophy of the underlying choroid at the area of the hole. So then it is very important to have of the graft initially. So this is how I do it nowadays. We get an idea of the size of the hole, exactly like the videos that Virgilio was showing, get an area where I want to get the graft away from any large blood vessels to reduce the bleeding, do everything completely, fill the eye as much as we can with PFO, uni-manually and cut with the scissors. I like to have completely clean edges of the transplant. So even if you have diathermy a lot, you try to get away from that diathermy, because now we know the linking of the neurosensory layers really help getting those clean edges to connect to the surrounding retina, which will reflect on much better outcomes. And then very slowly under PFO, move it with the finesse loop on the surface of the retina till you get to the hole, leave the PFO. Just before I close, I switch to air. So if anything goes in the eye, it would be air and not fluid, and then remove it at 2 weeks. If we do it this way, we may get very close to 100% anatomical closure, which may reflect in a good functional improvement. Now, there is an advantage also of leaving the PFO. Let's say early in the pre-op, this is a patient that had 2 ILM flaps before, still the hole is open, decided to do a graft, and I did a graft, And then initially, within the first 2 weeks under PFO, I see that the hole is still open and the graft is overlying the adjacent retina. So I have a chance to fix it when I go in. So when I went in at 2 weeks, still under PFO, I can I know exactly where the graft is, and I can still use that PFO and adjust the graft in place. And in those cases, I just do a fluid air exchange and SF6 and see how nicely it closed. So this gives us a second chance to be able at 2 weeks to slightly adjust the graft in place. Now, we have also wondered about the vascularization and reperfusion. There was a very nice article a few weeks ago by Humayun Tabande, who showed very nicely in those very large holes. This is the hole closed now, and you can see very nicely with the fluorescein angiography the vascularization of the graft at 6 weeks and 3 months. And also with OCT angiography, there is partial reperfusion of the area of the graft. This is another case, and you can see nicely the perfusion by fluorescein angiography through the graft, and also partial perfusion by OCT angiography. Now, I want to stop at this because this is a very important part of the discussion. When I go back to the stable group, this is one of the first cases that I did when I moved back to Michigan. And that patient had 2 ILM flaps before. And then I go in and I ask her, so how is your vision? She said, I've never seen like this for the last 5 years. And I was very surprised because when I look back at the charts, some of the pre-op visions were very similar to the vision that she had post-op. And I said, just can you explain to me? And the problem here is that those patients have a positive scotoma. Our optic nerve is a negative scotoma, but those patients have a big black spot in the center of their vision. So even in binocular function, that black spot really bothers them. So although the vision on an ETDRS chart stayed the same, but gradually that black spot changed and became gray and then completely vanished. So on a binocular basis, she can function much better. So the positive scotoma gradually changed to a negative scotoma. And that's the advantage of the flap, even in advanced cases. And one of the hypotheses is that because of the linking of the neurosensory layers, there is connection at the level of the ganglion cell layer in the adjacent retina, which increase the receptive field of those patients, changing the positive into a negative scotoma. Now, some of the cases are very complicated that we all do, like the myopic staphyloma. And in those cases, especially the recurrent one, you don't know even where the hole is. So it is very important pre-op to look at the fundus photos, correlate the fundus photos with the OCT to know exactly where the hole is in relation to the atrophy. So you know during the procedure where you can position the graft. Otherwise, you're not going to know where the hole is and the graft will be eccentric. Another trick is that you have to use long forceps, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to reach at the depth of the staphyloma. Follow the curvature of the staphyloma. Otherwise, exactly like Virgilio was showing, you can put on the graft, and if it is within the vitreous cavity, then you can lose it. So you know exactly the orientation of the graft. Always keep the photoreceptors down. You will never lose the flap in this way. Some of the very complicated cases also that we cannot work with the ILM is Alport syndrome, and the genetic defect also may include the retinoschisis in some of those patients. Those are giant retinal holes. You cannot use the ILM for any flap or peel. Sometimes it's very difficult to cut those cases because how abnormal the retina is, and some of that viscous or gooey material as you cut come off the retina, but you really have to oversize by at least 25 to 50% so you can stop the progression of those giant holes, and you just move it to the fovea. And you can see post-op day 3 under PFO how nicely and overlapping those edges are. Then we remove the PFO. At 5 months, you cannot even on a fundus photo see the edges of the graft. This is how nicely it integrates. That patient was 20/60 vision after they were 2400 for a few years. Some of the very complicated cases where you have underlying choroidal atrophy from geographic atrophy or AMD, you would combine it also with choroid, RPE, and retina. And we combined our experience with the Italian group. We published on this, and in those very advanced cases, that procedure may help. So there are so many hypotheses about the autologous retinal transplant, and there is no time to go through all those. A lot of basic science have been published, but I'm sure it's a combination of different type of those hypotheses. And I want to end my talk by this flow chart that currently I go by, and I think every one of us has a different flow chart, but this is what I do nowadays, and I'm sure it's going to be evolving. If I have a very small, less than 300 macular hole, fresh, no epiretinal membrane, I only do a partial vitrectomy, I don't touch the ILM, like a very small, fresh stage 2. If it is larger than 300 or a little bit chronic, I peel the ILM as well. If it is larger than 400 myopic hole, I do an inverted ILM flap. If it is myopic hole more than 400, whether moderate or high myopia, I do exactly like the case that Ezekiel showed, the ILM retracting door, which works in those cases because how the flap can retract in moderate and high myopia, and would not work in regular cases that are non-myopic. If it is larger than 700 microns, even in primary cases, I just go for a primary retinal transplant. Any refractory cases in my hands nowadays, I usually just go for a retinal transplant. And maybe I should stop here so we can open the discussion for everyone. Thank you.
Very good. Excellent. I love your talk. And I recommend everyone opens the microphone. You can start the discussion. And I have some questions from some audience. And the first one came from Adriana Vivenco from Mexico. And she asked Ezekiel, which is the benefit of the second case that you fold the limitant membrane temporal to the macula? He asked why you did that and what the advantage for this technique.
Yes. Hello.
Yeah, it's good.
It's a very good question that I think that the benefit of this technique, it had two things that I like very much. That is, you don't need to peel all the ILM from the macula, because you redrape the ILM over the retina. And to peel nasal to temporal, I thought that it would be more useful in this case with posterior staphyloma, because the high proportion of patients with nasal distort at the shape of the posterior staphyloma. I am testing this technique. We are working in a prospective study compared with the flap, the inverted flap. So that are the two things I like of this technique. You don't need to take out the ILM from the eye, and you peel to the nasal region. I think it could help us to relax the retina at this side.
Very good. And had another question for Vigilio that's come from Adriana Vivanco. She asked you if the patients complain about inferior scotoma after you remove a piece of retina on the up part, and what's your experience about that?
No. Until now, none of the patients have complained about the scotoma from the area that you take the graft. I don't know, Tamer, maybe if he knows something, I mean, he can answer that. What I would like to say, it's exactly in the second case that I presented. It was very, very interesting because Tamer already mentioned to me once about the positive to a negative scotoma, and it was really nice to hear the patient. The next day, he said exactly that. He said, I asked him, how are you? And he said, you know, doctor, that black spot, it's not black anymore. So I said, really? Yeah, it's much better. So even without thinking about the visual acuity. And I think it's something that is really happening in these patients. But I don't know, Tamer, maybe have you seen, have you heard patients complaining about the scotoma from the area of the graft?
No, I didn't have. We tried to ask in the global study, but so far I didn't have anyone objectively or subjectively come specifically addressing that point. And I specifically try nowadays to ask my patients, and no one complained about it.
Okay. I mean, for sure there is an scotoma, but the patients are not complaining.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe reconnect some ganglionar cells or stem cells. That helps. But it's amazing.
But it's very similar, Jorge. I mean, just a quick comment. I mean, think about it. If you have a patient with retinal detachment that you fix, and you do you drain posteriorly through a posterior retinotomy, or you fix a break superiorly and you do laser, patients don't usually complain from those scotomas.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I agree. And I have another question for you, Tamer, from Shiv Patel from US. He asks, if you place the graft subretinal, that's going to be different from the result you're having now?
So I tried through my talk to look at all the confounding variables like pre-retinal, subretinal, looking at the different size of the graft, the location where we harvest the graft from. But although we have 129 cases, there are so many confounding variables in the global study that it is very difficult to come up with a conclusion. Which one is better? We had, once the hole is closed and you have more ellipsoid zonal linking of the neurosensor layer, then you have a better outcome. But it's very difficult for me to say whether you put it pre-retinal or subretinal or from any different location, whether this is associated with a better outcome. We always try to think about the different hypotheses, how this works. And I think the less we do mechanically, the better outcome we can get, though I cannot prove it. So I think if under PFO we are able to move it and just leave it where the area of the fovea is, we may have better outcomes so that we're not pushing on the graft, because we don't know if we're getting better function because of the photoreceptors or anything within that area. I think many of the surgeons that were trying initially to put it subretinal, they were doing fluid air exchange and gas, so they wanted to make sure that it is secure in place. However, now I think with the PFO, we don't have to risk that, and I think less is more.
And how long the PFO stay inside the eye? 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
2 weeks. So I put the patients on Durezol 4 times a day, and I see them at 1 day and in 1 week. And if everything is good, then I usually go in at 2 weeks and just take the PFO out. Is that if everything is good, if I have to slightly adjust it in place, then like the video that I showed, I just do the adjust it in place, do fluid air exchange, and put SF6.
Yeah, no oil, only SF6.
Yes.
Yeah. And I have another question from the Shiv Patel. Yes, when the graft has edema, how you handle that?
So in the global study and the initial surgeon study, we have seen some edema, not initially. The initial edema is because of the surgical manipulation and it goes away with integration of the retina and the layering. But over like 1 to 2 years after the graft, some of those patients have had inner retinal edema and cystic spaces. And we thought, should we treat this as a CME? This did not reflect on any vision changes, but most of those within few months completely went away without any treatment. We don't understand why that happens between 1 and 2 years, but didn't affect the outcomes and they didn't need to be treated.
Thank you. And Jose Ramon Mier from Mexico asked Virgilio, if you don't peel the limited membrane, and this case come with apparent membrane, what's your result about that?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer. I don't have the answer. Actually, as you saw in the first case, I peeled the ILM, and after I spoke with Tamer, he said that probably it's not a good idea in these primary cases. So this is why in the second case we left the ILM. But regarding the formation or not of an epiretinal membrane, I don't know. We know that if we peel the ILM, supposedly we will not have a secondary epiretinal membrane. But in these cases, I don't see the relation about that. I don't know, Tamer. Maybe Tamer, can you explain us why you think it's in these primary cases it's better not to peel the ILM? You think that there's more chances of a good integration? what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, this is a great discussion point, Virgilio, and I think this is something that we learned now from the global study. So I really like your second case where you went initially, put the transplant, and then you had a chance that you still had ILM to work with. So if we're thinking surgically about just closing holes, this increases our chances to have an additional option. But when I go back to the global study, all those primary patients that had a transplant did not have ILM here. And those are the ones that had great outcomes. So I think when you look at the different hypotheses now, there is a value of the Mueller cells and the ILM. And the more we can save those Mueller cells and ILM and keep them in place, it seems it's working much better. The integration, the linking of the neurosensory layers was fantastic when we had the graft without even touching the ILM. So yes, in the future, it can give us another option, but maybe there is something we don't understand here by just moving the retina and how the retina integrates. And maybe when you look at those OCTs, that ILM grows to that area of the graft or connects to the ILM coming from the graft. But I think there is a value of leaving it in place.
Okay.
Today, I have a pleasure to have Jerry Garcia, the president of Mexican Association. I think he has some comments about this talk. Jerry, please.
Oh yeah, so Tamer, you make a very compelling case about the vascularization and integration of the graft, and you did have good improvement. Is there any study using microperimetry to really confirm that the graft is transmitting signals? Because visual acuity improvement might be from the edges of the hole coming closer, and not the graft itself. I think it would be really interesting to have a study with microperimetry.
Great question. And initially, when our initial publication, we had the co-localization with microperimetry in the large hole, and gradually, as the vision improved, there was increased sensitivity over that area of the graft. Now, we have also many cases in the global study that will be included in the publication. It depends on which microperimetry you do. Nowadays, it's much easier to do the Maya. And some of those cases show gradual improvement. If the vision is very low to start with, it's very difficult to get accurate microperimetry and compare those cases. Also, when you look at those cases, we have seen increased sensitivity over close to the center of the graft and also at the edges of the graft. So we have seen both. Now, when you look at the size of those grafts in the global study, if you have a very small hole, like 300, 400 microns, you may think that slightly eccentric fixation or that area may improve the vision. But if you have 1,500 or 2,000, it's very difficult to understand that a very good vision would come from an edge of the graft. So we don't know yet. I think we're doing more. We're doing multifocal ERGs, adaptive optics, and we're going to gradually understand more about the graft from all the global experience.
Awesome.
Very good. Tamer, for everybody, my friend Marcelo Zaz from Buenos Aires asked a question, said, nowadays have a place for the retina detachment in order to fix macular hole. Yes, anyone can say about that? If retina detachment technique to chronic macular hole is still a good technique.
I haven't done it. I don't have experience.
Yeah, Jorge, can you explain a little bit more the question? I didn't get
he asked if the technique of detach the macular retina in order to fix chronic macular hole is still a good technique nowadays.
So I have not done it. I know some groups that have done it and had good success. And this is what's exciting nowadays. There are so many options and so many techniques. And I think the value of the procedure is that they think in chronic cases there is some adherence between the neurosensory retina and the RPE. And if they can release that, the retina might be more flexible to close. My concern with that is that if you forcibly inject fluid around the retina, you might be destroying some of those photoreceptors. But we're going to know more once we have more experience with those cases too.
Very good. Some tips for the beginners that's going to start. What kind of scissor is the best one for start to cut the graft? You have any option that you see is better than the other?
Virgilio, what did you use?
The first cases I started with a horizontal scissors, and I didn't like it, so I switched to vertical scissors. The only thing is that these scissors are little different from the ones we used in the past in 20 gauge, because it's really sharp, the tip. So you have to be very careful in order not to touch the choroid, because this is another possible place for bleeding. So, but I prefer to use vertical. I think you use, Tamara, these automated scissors.
Yeah, I really like it's a vertical tip, exactly like the one you have, but I really like the pneumatic one that attaches to the machine. So the control with the foot pedal is really much better. And it's under PFO, everything is very stable. So you don't have to rush, just go step by step.
Yeah.
I see that Tamer used only 4 points diathermy. And after that, he circulate with hot coagulation. And anyone of you has any problem with bleeding with only
I have.
What you did?
Well, in one of the cases that I did, I had more blood than I expected. And that's, for me, it was a complication because it gets very sticky. And once you cut the retina, the area of the graft, it's very unstable. You have to be very careful how you handle this little piece of retina. And if there is some blood, for me, it was a complication. It was very difficult to handle. So this is why I tried to do more cauterization. I also it was like a surprise that Tamer only did in one of the videos only 4 points, because or Tamer, you increase more the pressure, the intraocular pressure, in order not to have some blood. What are your recommendations, Tamer?
So initially, I didn't know what to do. So I was doing 360 laser, very similar to what we do for chorioretinal biopsies. But then as the graft were healing and I was reviewing those OCTs, I thought that the key is a clean edge. So if I have a clean edge, then those layers would have a better way to connect with the neurosensory layer and looking at the linking of the neurosensory layers. So I felt that maybe I shouldn't do too much. So I try initially, when I choose an area that has minimal blood vessels crossing. And I only use a diathermy if I see one of those very fine blood vessels, and also to delineate which area I need with the graft. I fill as much as I can with PFO. I don't increase the pressure in the eye. Even if I have very slight bleeding, then a little bit of blood may help the adhesion of the graft at the new site. There was one case that I was a little bit deep and I got more bleeding. I didn't do anything. I gradually floated over the PFO. Then with the soft tip, I removed that blood over the PFO, then filled the eye and continued cutting. So if we are not deep in the choroid and it's only a retina and there are very few spots at the small blood vessels crossing, I think this is good enough. But the key is to try to keep a really clean edge of the transplant.
Good. I think our president, Derek, want to say?
Yes, I want to ask you of all the panel, do you have any experience with amniotic membrane in these holes?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
And I think you did once know, Ezequiel, show a case that you haven't to have enough limitant membrane, and you shift the technique for amniotic membrane. You have experience, you can say?
No, the case I showed, the first one I did, but a few months ago appears an article, a very interesting article from Stanislav Rizzo, that he used amniotic membrane where there isn't enough ILM near the hole, like a second surgery.
Very good. I'd like to hear our president, Dr. Tarek Hassan. I think he has some words to add for all this discussion.
Well, yeah, thank you, George. You know, Tamer and the rest of you, this technique has been really remarkable over the last couple of years and has allowed us to try to repair holes that really before this time were not approachable and really had very limited likelihood of having success with any kind of a repair. And the cases you've shown, Tamer, and the rest of you are really quite amazing, and the global study has shown us wonderful results. Maybe Tamer or any of you could speak to this, because we do have this other amniotic membrane technique. Do any of you, or maybe Tamer, since you've looked at the data very carefully from the global study, do you think that we would find differences in the integration and the ellipsoid zone reconstitution between the techniques, the autologous versus amniotic membrane? So I think people want some direction on which technique to try when faced with this kind of a hole.
So I think it's very exciting, Tarek, that we are learning so much every day. Stano has great publication and showed great outcomes. Many of the surgeons had tried the amniotic membrane and it worked for them. So I think the next few years are going to be exciting to try to refine our techniques and then understand which one is better for what. If we come up with a flow chart to understand more, and I think one of the exciting studies that we are working on with Tommaso Rossi in Italy, he is actually collecting cases from trying to do an analysis of how those holes close to try to understand the differences between the techniques and outcomes and so on. So this is just the beginning, and I think it's going to be very exciting for everyone.
Very good. I think I have a last question because the time is running out. Antonio Meida from Mexico, he asked if the time of the chronicity of the hole does matter in the results.
Yes, from the global study, we know that the better outcomes were in the large myopic, unusually large holes that never had surgery before. So those were, some of them were a little bit chronic, but some of them were also not that chronic. So the earlier we do the technique and close the hole, the better the outcomes before the loss of RPE, because it's not only about photoreceptors. The chronic ones, myopic ones, they have a lot of atrophy, and in some very advanced cases, you may need choroid and retina. So the earlier we do, and this is why it's very exciting to consider it as a primary procedure for those unusual holes.
That's amazing. To start with this, I think it's going to be very good. But now I think we have a very good opportunity to hear Jerry Garcia, the president of the Mexican Association. He's going to say some word of this amazing and friendly society that support RWC. Jerry.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the Retina World Congress for including us in this webinar, allowing us to collaborate. I'm gonna share my screen now. There I am. Share. Okay. So we are turning 39 years old this year. And this is the Mexican Retina Association started in 1981, and this was one of the first meetings. Yes, yes. Okay. Yes, I will. Sorry. Share. I will share. Okay, and I'm. Oh. Yes. Okay. Can you see me now?
Okay.
There it is. Oh.
No, I can't see anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. You share. It should be sharing now.
No, I can't see your screen.
My presentation, my screen.
Yeah.
Well, then I'll have to do it a cappella.
Yeah, I think so.
This is the last try. If you cannot see it, then it will be a cappella. Okay, doesn't matter. Well, in 1981, the Mexican Retina Association began as a small group of retina specialists trying to share knowledge. And currently, our meetings have 600 to 700 assistants, so we've become quite large. And I know times right now are really difficult because of all the coronavirus pandemic. But still, we have to make plans. We have to go on. So we have our annual meeting planned for October 14th through the 17th, 2020. Hopefully, on those dates, things are going to be a lot smoother for all the countries that now are suffering this terrible pandemic. This meeting is going to take place in Mérida. It's in the Yucatan Peninsula. It's a very, very nice place, a very beautiful place. And it has meetings, international meeting center, which is just a beautiful place, a lot of hotels, a lot of great spots to visit. And we have great guest speakers from the US. We have Daniel Chao from San Diego, Michael Engelberg from New York. From Argentina, we have Maximiliano Gordon and Mitzi Torres, Dr. Gon Yu from South Korea, Dr. Efrem Mandelkorn from Canada, Dr. Don Sim from the UK, and Dr. Carolina Sardi from Colombia. So please feel free to check our website, which is www.amretina.org for updates on the program. And we look forward for everything clearing out in this pandemic, and hopefully see you in Mexico in October. Thank you very much.
Very good, Jerry. I think to go to Mexico and have you guys in a big meeting like this would be very good. Mexican Association is a very good partner, and we are working together, and we encourage you to continue work with us. And we're gonna do anything you need to spread around the world the invitation for all the colleagues across the world to come to Mexico. I think it's gonna be a very good choice after all this pandemic finish to see you guys in Mexico. But at the end, I think have some words from our president, Derek. Please, Derek, say some words, and I'm gonna finish because the time goes by very fast. I have more than 1 hour talking. It was so nice to have all these smart guys here. That's the time flies very fast.
Yeah, thank you, George. Yeah, we are really honored to have the participation of the Mexican Retina Association and Ezekiel and Tamer, of course, and really Virgilio and Jerry. It's marvelous to be able to communicate in these difficult times when we can't get together, but we can still share these wonderful cases and all the great knowledge that you provided. The RWC continues to try to increase its educational mission, and we look forward to doing more and more of these webinars with folks from around the world. We want to thank all of you who have joined us on the internet across the globe. We hope you're all safe and staying healthy and watching out for each other. And we look forward to doing this more and more frequently because of the limitation that we have in attending meetings and sharing our experiences in the way that we have in the past. George, do you want to mention our next concepts of when we may be looking forward to our next meeting?
Oh, yes. Guys, I have to announce for everyone across the globe that because of dark times of virus, we are trying to be more close with all the partner societies, and we are trying to push to have meetings like this every month. And sometimes we can get together like the Pan America, the Bravis, and Mexican, and we are going to try to have some online meetings and do everywhere we can to improve our education, and even with we can still have a very high level of education. Right now, just present our next event that's gonna be on May. You're gonna have Maria Berrocal, Nataranja from India, and Miguel from Uruguay. And they are get together for discussing vitrectomy on diabetic. But anyway, I'm very honored to have all you here and have audience around now 200 people around the globe. And I congratulate Mexico was the highest number of participants. And after that, Brazil and Argentina. And I'm really happy to have all of you. And I encourage all the society across the globe. Everyone, we are open to get together and have meetings like this. That's gonna help a lot. Thank you very much. Have a very nice Sunday. And I hope everybody stay healthy and see each other after finish all this pandemic treatment. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you.
In the beginning, we had a world-changing vision to unite international retina societies, with each of our last 2 editions drawing 1,000 attendees from almost 70 countries. This vision has now become reality. We bring retina specialists together. Our conference features presentations from global thought leaders, accredited professional education courses, expert panel discussions, and industry exhibits. New in 2019 is RWC Unplugged, a physician-organized and driven session that offers a unique opportunity to learn, share, and discuss controversial topics in retina with a large group of industry experts and clinical leaders. No scripts, no holds barred. Join us for the 3rd edition of the Retina World Congress. Together, we continue to transform the retina world community.